The downtown hum of Riverside Grill wrapped around Jake Morrison like a familiar coat. Voices layering over the clink of silverware, laughter rising from corner booths, the sizzle of steaks hitting cast iron in the open kitchen. Friday night in Austin, Texas, and the restaurant pulsed with that particular energy of people shaking off the work week, loosening ties, ordering second rounds of beer they didn't need but wanted anyway. Jake sat across from his daughter at a corner table, the kind tucked against the window where you could watch the street without being watched back. Emma had her fork poised over macaroni and cheese, the house specialty for kids who didn't yet appreciate the $40 ribeyes their parents ordered. 10 years old and already developing that quality of stillness Jake recognized from her mother, the ability to be completely present in a moment, to find joy in something as simple as perfectly cooked pasta. Her feet swung above the floor, sneakers never quite reaching the ground despite the booster seat she'd recently declared herself too old for. The rhythm matched the jukebox bleeding through the ambient noise, some classic rock ballad Jake half remembered from deployments overseas, played on scratchy speakers in dust-choked barracks where homesickness hit hardest after midnight. "Dad, look!" Emma held up her spoon, a single piece of macaroni balanced on the edge like a tightrope walker testing the wire. She tilted it slowly, eyes narrowed in concentration, before the pasta tumbled back onto her plate. Her giggle bubbled up, pure and unself-conscious. Jake felt his chest ease, tension he hadn't realized he'd been carrying, draining away. These moments? This was everything. Not the adrenaline of night raids, not the weight of a rifle or the rush of combat. Just his daughter laughing over a failed magic trick with food. "That's some impressive balance. Maybe I should sign you up for the circus." Emma leaned across the table, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Only if you're the clown, Dad. You'd have to wear the big shoes." The joke landed exactly where she'd aimed it. Jake chuckled, shaking his head while Emma's grin widened with the satisfaction of getting her father to laugh. These were the victories that mattered now. Not mission objectives or confirmed kills, but making his daughter smile, hearing her laugh, watching her become more herself with every passing day. He took another bite of his burger, nothing fancy, just beef and cheese and grilled onions, but it tasted better because she sat across from him, because for this hour, in this moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, and nobody was deployed or dying or demanding anything beyond enjoying dinner together. Emma propped her chin on her hand, studying him with that particular intensity children sometimes possess, seeing things adults work hard to hide. "You look tired." Jake brushed it aside with practiced ease. "That's because you wore me out at the park earlier. You run faster every week." "Not faster than you." The absolute certainty in her voice, the unshakable faith that her father was unstoppable, invincible, capable of anything. He didn't correct her, didn't mention his knees ached more than they used to, or that 12-hour shifts at the construction site left him moving like a man twice his age some evenings. To Emma, he needed to remain what she saw, solid, dependable, the man who could always keep up, who never fell behind. Around them, the restaurant carried its rhythm forward. Waiters called out orders in kitchen shorthand. Glass clinked against glass at the bar. A table of coworkers erupted in laughter over some story that probably wasn't as funny as the beer made it seem. Normal Friday night sounds, the comfortable chaos of people living ordinary lives. Jake was just another tired father trying to navigate the simple ritual of dinner out with his kid. And that was exactly how he preferred it. He'd worn other uniforms, carried other responsibilities, lived other lives where his name and face mattered to people who decided whether missions were go or no-go. But here, At this scarred wooden table with Emma drawing patterns in her leftover cheese sauce, he was simply Sophie's dad. He reached across to brush an invisible crumb from her cheek. "Eat a little more, sweetheart. Then maybe we'll split dessert." Her face transformed, eyes lighting up. "Ice cream?" Ice cream. Though he knew the sugar rush would keep her awake past bedtime, some rules existed specifically to be bent on ordinary Friday nights like this one. Emma was mid-sentence, describing how her school's art teacher always made the paint water look like rainbow soup, when her voice faltered. Her gaze shifted toward the bar across the restaurant, fork pausing halfway to her mouth. The change was instant. The way her eyebrows drew together, how her small body angled slightly away from whatever she'd noticed. Jake's awareness sharpened immediately, that old instinct clicking into place before conscious thought caught up. He followed her line of sight. Near the bar, a young woman stood with her back pressed against the wall. Mid-20s maybe, hair pulled back in a professional twist, charcoal suit that spoke of corner offices and client meetings. But the composed exterior was fracturing. Two men flanked her, leaning too close, their laughter carrying across the ambient noise, sharp, mocking, the kind that made listeners shrink rather than smile. The woman shook her head, the gesture clear even from Jake's vantage point. One of the men reached casually toward her arm, the movement too familiar for strangers. She tried to sidestep. He blocked her path with the deliberate ease of someone who thought no one would stop him. Jake's eyes tracked the room. People had noticed. He could see it in the quick glances, the way diners suddenly found their menus fascinating. A couple at the nearest booth whispered behind their hands. One man pulled out his phone, but used it only as a shield, scrolling blankly rather than calling for help. The restaurant staff exchanged nervous looks, but didn't move. The silence in that moment rang louder than any shout. "Dad!" Emma tugged gently at his sleeve, her tone quiet, uneasy. "That lady looks scared." Jake felt the question land with more weight than it should carry. He'd seen this kind of scene before, not in restaurants but in other places, other countries, where hesitation bought consequences too steep to pay. Here, though, the stakes felt no less real. A crowded room, packed with capable adults, all choosing to look away. Sophie's eyes fixed on him now, wide and searching. She'd already drawn her conclusion. If nobody else would act, her father would. Jake exhaled slowly, the breath steadying him even as muscle memory kicked in. The same mental shift from civilian to operator, from bystander to responder. For a moment, he sat perfectly still, burger half-eaten, napkin resting on his lap. But inside, something he hadn't heard in 3 years was waking up. The voice that had guided him through sandstorms and firefights, through missions where failure meant body bags and closed casket funerals. At the bar, he could see the woman more clearly now. Professional armor intact despite the stress fracturing underneath, shoulders squared in practiced poise, chin lifted in that particular way of someone accustomed to holding ground in boardrooms. But here, trapped against polished mahogany by two men whose tailored shirts couldn't disguise the aggression beneath, her composure was cracking. "Excuse me." Her voice cut through the restaurant noise, distinct and firm. "I've made it clear I'm not interested. Please step aside." The taller of the two men, expensive watch, silk tie, everything about him screaming money and entitlement, leaned closer, his smile all teeth and no warmth. "Come on, Katie. We're just being friendly. One drink won't kill your career." The second man shifted, blocking her path to the door with casual deliberation. "Unless you think you're too good for us now that you're at Mitchell & Barnes. That prestigious firm making you forget your old friends?" Her eyes darted toward the bartender, who suddenly discovered something fascinating to clean at the far end of the counter. "We were never friends. And it's Catherine now. Please move." Jake's mind split between two instincts: the promise he'd made to Rachel in the hospital 3 years ago, her hand cool and light in his, growing lighter every day as the cancer ate her from the inside out. "Promise me you'll leave the war behind, Jake. Sophie needs her father whole." Against that, the older promise, the one sworn under different fluorescent lights, surrounded by men who'd become more than brothers. "I will defend those who cannot defend themselves." Emma's small voice pulled him back to the present. "Dad." She really looked scared. Jake's decision crystallized. He placed his napkin carefully beside his plate, the gesture deliberate and ordinary as breathing. Then he leaned closer to Emma, his voice soft but carrying the tone she recognized meant no argument. "Stay right here, sweetheart. Don't move until I come back." Her lips parted, protest forming automatically, but something in his expression, maybe the shift from Dad to someone else, someone harder, stilled the words before they emerged. She nodded once, reluctant, her fingers gripping the table edge like an anchor. Jake pushed his chair back. The scrape of wood against tile drew no attention compared to the escalating situation at the bar. As he rose, the taller man's hand finally made contact with Catherine's sleeve. She pressed back into the wall, eyes scanning the room in silent desperation. No one met her gaze. No one except Jake. He moved with the calm deliberation of someone who understood weight and consequence, who'd learned the hard way that rushed decisions got people killed. Every step away from his daughter and toward the bar felt measured, precise, not hurried, not hesitant, but inevitable as gravity. His height didn't make him the largest man in the restaurant, yet something in his bearing drew quiet attention even before his words, a quality the teams had beaten into him over years of deployments. The way he moved through space, owning it without apology. Emma's whisper followed him, though he didn't turn back. "Be careful, Dad." He heard her. Every syllable etched itself into him, anchoring his resolve. This wasn't about confrontation for the sake of pride or proving anything to anyone. It was about the example he would set, the memory Emma would carry forward into her own life when faced with choices between action and silence. Would she recall her father shrinking away, or would she remember that he stood when no one else would? Catherine tried again to move past the men. They shifted with her, a choreographed wall closing in. The taller one leaned close enough that his breath would carry the smell of whiskey. "Come on, just one drink. Don't make this difficult." Her voice broke slightly, fear bleeding through professional composure. "I said no." Jake's pace didn't quicken, though his heartbeat did. He placed his hand gently on the counter near where Catherine stood, the action drawing her startled eyes toward him. For a fraction of a second, relief flickered across her face, quickly replaced by disbelief. Someone was actually stepping forward. Jake closed the final distance. His presence filled the narrow space between Catherine and her pursuers, his face shifting from the warmth he'd shown Emma into something sharper, controlled, unreadable, but firm enough to demand attention without words. The taller man straightened, irritation replacing his predatory focus. "Hey, buddy, mind your own business." The smirk worn by men accustomed to getting away with too much for too long. Jake's eyes stayed on Catherine. He angled his body slightly, creating breathing room, his stance protective without theatrics. Then his voice came, steady and low, leaving no space for argument. "Excuse me, gentlemen. I think the lady would like to be left alone." Simple words, but they carried a weight that turned heads from nearby tables. Catherine blinked, almost stunned by how unshaken he sounded. The two men exchanged a glance, their amusement faltering at the lack of hesitation in his tone. The restaurant's ambient noise softened as people sensed the shift. Silverware stilled, conversations trailed into silence, and in that suspended moment, everyone waited to see what would happen next. For several heartbeats, the standoff held. The taller man's smirk curled back into place, but looked forced now, a mask slipping. He leaned forward, breath thick with alcohol, voice dripping mockery. "And who exactly are you supposed to be? Her boyfriend? Her bodyguard?" He barked out a laugh, nudging his companion as though he'd said something clever. The second man, stockier, military-bearing despite the expensive suit, didn't join the laughter. His eyes tracked Jake with the particular assessment of someone who recognized a fellow professional. Jake didn't flinch, didn't rise to the bait or break eye contact. He simply adjusted his stance, placing one foot slightly forward, shoulders squared. Calm, immovable. "I said let her go." The stockier man's expression shifted, something clicking into place. "You military?" The question cut through the mockery. Jake's face remained neutral, but the confirmation hung in the air between them. "Was once." The man's posture changed subtly, a slight straightening of his spine, unconscious response to recognizing authority. "Marines. I did a tour in Helmand." "SEAL." The single word landed like a stone in still water. Around them, whispers rippled from table to table. The taller man's smirk faltered entirely, replaced by something more complex, challenge mixed with caution. But the stockier one, the former Marine, seemed suddenly caught between two worlds. His eyes held a moment of soldier-to-soldier recognition, respect, grudging but present. He glanced at his friend, then back to Jake, decision playing across his features. "Marcus, man, maybe we should—" Marcus wasn't listening, too caught in his own resentment, too drunk to register the significance. "Oh, we've got a hero here." His voice rose, drawing more attention. "Some washed-up soldier thinking he can play white knight in a bar." The Marine, Jake would learn his name was Ryan Sullivan later, shot his friend a warning look. "Marcus, seriously, let's just go." But Marcus was beyond hearing reason. Alcohol and wounded pride formed a volatile mixture, and he'd spent too many years hearing yes to suddenly accept no. His hand moved from near Catherine, only to jab a finger toward Jake's chest. "What's wrong? SEAL can't handle a real fight without your government toys?" Jake said nothing. His silence was its own form of control, refusal to be baited that seemed to infuriate Marcus more than any retort could have. The lack of reaction, the absolute stillness. It spoke to training and experience Marcus couldn't comprehend through his alcohol-soaked anger. Catherine used the momentary distraction to edge away from the wall, her movement small but deliberate. Marcus's attention snapped back to her, focus narrowing. "Where do you think you're going?" He reached for her wrist. "We're not done talking." Jake moved then, a single fluid step that placed him between Catherine and Marcus's outstretched hand. Nothing dramatic, nothing that could be called aggression, just simple, effective interposition. "I think you are." The tension pulled tighter. Ryan stood frozen between loyalties, the camaraderie of shared military experience versus years of friendship with Marcus. He glanced toward the exit, then back at his friend, indecision clear in every line of his body. "Come on, let's get out of here. Not worth it." But Marcus was beyond listening. beyond thinking. The alcohol, the rejection, the accumulated frustrations of a man rarely hearing the word no, it all came together in one volatile instant. "Get out of my way," he growled at Jake, control fraying visibly. Jake's voice stayed quiet, but something in it cut through the noise. "Go home. Sleep it off. Tomorrow you'll be glad this didn't go further." Wrong thing to say. Or perhaps, given what followed, exactly the right thing. Marcus's patience snapped. He lunged forward, fist cutting through air in a sloppy arc aimed at Jake's jaw. The swing carried reckless confidence born from intimidating others into submission, from years of believing his money and name meant consequences didn't apply. Jake's body shifted with instinctive precision, a smooth sidestep that made the strike glance past harmlessly. He didn't counter, didn't grab, didn't escalate, just avoided with minimum movement, conserving energy, letting Marcus's momentum carry him off balance. Gasps rippled through the restaurant. Ryan stepped back, his expression mixing embarrassment with reluctant admiration. Catherine pressed against the bar, eyes wide as Marcus recovered and spun back toward Jake, face flushed with rage and humiliation. "You son of a..." The rest dissolved as he charged forward again, both arms outstretched like he meant to tackle Jake to the ground. This time, Jake's hand came up, catching Marcus's arm at wrist and elbow in a simple control hold perfected through thousands of hours training. He applied just enough pressure to direct Marcus's momentum downward, using the man's own weight and force against him. Marcus found himself suddenly on one knee, arm extended awkwardly, Jake's grip preventing him from rising without considerable pain. "Stop now." Jake's voice remained level, betraying no strain. "Before this gets worse for you." Now, finally, phones emerged from pockets. Half a dozen people filming, capturing the confrontation from multiple angles. The footage would show Marcus throwing the first punch, Jake only defending, the clear disparity between drunken aggression and controlled response. The restaurant manager approached at last, his expression mixing concern with annoyance. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to..." "Call the police," Jake interrupted, not taking his eyes off Marcus. "This man was harassing a woman and assaulted me when I intervened." The manager hesitated, eyes darting between Jake and Marcus, recognition dawning. "These gentlemen are regulars. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding." Catherine stepped forward then, professional composure reasserting itself despite the adrenaline still flooding her system. "It's not a misunderstanding. These men wouldn't let me leave when I asked repeatedly. This man," she nodded toward Jake, "was the only one who stepped in to help." The manager's certainty wavered, discomfort replacing conviction. "Mr. Webb's family owns half the waterfront properties in this district. His father and I go way back." Jake understood immediately. The connections, the reasons staff had been reluctant to intervene. Not just bystander apathy, but the quiet tyranny of local influence. He'd seen it before, in small towns and big cities alike, invisible lines of power protecting some and leaving others vulnerable. Ryan finally moved, placing a hand on the manager's shoulder. His face showed sobriety, beginning to cut through the alcohol fog, reality settling in. "Look, we've all had too much to drink. Let me get Marcus home and we'll forget the whole thing. No need for police." Jake maintained his hold on Marcus, who'd stopped struggling, but whose eyes blazed with resentment. "That's not your decision to make. It's hers." All eyes turned to Catherine. She stood straighter, smoothing her jacket with an unconscious gesture that seemed to help her gather composure. Her gaze moved from Marcus to Ryan, then settled on Jake. Something passed between them, moment of understanding, shared principle in a room that had abandoned it. "I don't want trouble." She spoke carefully, words calibrated with a lawyer's precision. But I also don't want this to happen to someone else who might not have help nearby. Diplomats answer. Not pressing charges, but not pretending nothing happened either. Jake respected the calculation, even as he recognized what it meant. In a town where Marcus's family held influence, there were consequences to consider beyond this evening. Jake slowly released Marcus's arm, stepping back to give him space to rise. You heard the lady. Go home. And next time a woman says no, listen the first time. Marcus stood, rubbing his wrist, expression dark with humiliation, and promised retribution. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Neither do you, Jake replied simply. Ryan grabbed Marcus's shoulder, steering him toward the exit. Let's go, man. It's done. Relief colored his voice, but as they passed Jake, Ryan paused. A moment of soldier-to-soldier recognition passed between them. No words, just a slight nod acknowledging what had and hadn't happened here tonight. Then they were gone, door swinging shut behind them. The restaurant remained suspended in strange silence that follows averted violence. Then slowly, gradually, conversations resumed. Silverware clinked against plates. The mundane rhythm of dinner service reasserted itself as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. But something had shifted. Glances followed Jake as he turned back to Catherine, her composure intact, but hands betraying a slight tremor. Thank you, her voice steadier than her hands. I was handling it, but thank you. Jake nodded, understanding the complexity behind her words. The professional woman who needed to believe she could handle herself, balanced against the human being, grateful not to face threat alone. You're welcome. Across the restaurant, Emma sat watching, dinner forgotten, eyes wide with mixture of worry and something else. Pride, perhaps, or a new understanding of her father. Jake gestured for her to stay put a moment longer as he made sure Catherine was truly all right. Can I call someone for you? Someone to pick you up? Catherine shook her head, drawing a deep breath that seemed to center her. I'm fine, really. My car's just outside, and I only had one glass of wine hours ago. She glanced toward the door where Marcus and Ryan had exited. They won't be back tonight. They're all bluster when sober. Jake wasn't certain, but nodded anyway. If you're sure. She looked at him more carefully now, taking in details she'd missed during the confrontation. The calluses on his hands speaking of physical work, the straight posture that wasn't practiced but ingrained, the quiet confidence sourced not from arrogance but experience. Seal. Huh. Something like approval flickered in her eyes. Former. Construction site supervisor now. Quite a career change. Not as much as you might think. Still building things that need to stand up under pressure. A hint of smile touched her lips. Well, thank you, former SEAL. She hesitated as if debating whether to continue. I'll remember what you did. In a world where most people just watch, you acted. That matters. Jake didn't know how to respond, so he simply nodded again. As Catherine gathered her purse and jacket with deliberate movements, Jake returned to his table where Emma waited with 1,000 questions in her eyes. Is she okay? The first words out of her mouth as Jake slid back into his seat. She's fine, Jake assured her, amazed as always by his daughter's capacity for concern about others. Those men were bothering her, but they've gone now. Emma's expression remained solemn. They were scary. But you weren't scared at all. Jake considered how to answer truthfully without frightening her. Being brave doesn't mean not feeling fear. It means doing what's right, even when you're afraid. Were you afraid? A little. not of getting hurt, but of making things worse instead of better. Emma processed this, forehead furrowing in that way it did when she was thinking deeply. But you helped anyway. Yes, because it was the right thing to do. The simplicity of the exchange seemed to satisfy her. She picked up her fork, pushing the now cold macaroni around her plate, then looked up at Jake with that disarming directness children sometimes possess. Mom would be proud of you. The words caught him unexpectedly, sudden tightness forming in his throat. Rachel had been gone 3 years, but moments like this made her absence freshly acute. He wondered what she would have thought watching tonight. Would she have seen it as breaking his promise to leave violence behind? Or keeping his deeper promise to remain the man she'd fallen in love with, someone who couldn't stand by when others were threatened? I hope so, sweetheart. I hope so. The remainder of their dinner passed quietly. Emma's appetite returned, though Jake found himself going through the motions, mind replaying the confrontation, analyzing what he could have done differently, better. Old habits from training that never quite faded. As they finished and Jake signaled for the check, the manager approached their table. His earlier discomfort had been replaced by deferential politeness that struck Jake as equally disingenuous. Your meal tonight is on the house, sir. Voice pitched low enough nearby tables couldn't hear. And I want to apologize for the incident. Mr. Webb and his friend have been valued customers, but that doesn't excuse their behavior. Jake met the man's eyes steadily. It's not me you should be apologizing to. The manager had grace enough to look embarrassed. Miss Mitchell is a regular as well. I've already spoken with her by phone. She was understanding. Jake doubted that, but nodded, unwilling to prolong the conversation with Emma listening. Thank you for the meal, but that's not necessary. I insist. It's the least we can do. Jake relented, recognizing the gesture for what it was, not generosity, but damage control. Thank you. We appreciate it. As he helped Emma with her jacket, the manager cleared his throat, clearly wanting to say something more. Mr. Foster, he hesitated. Those men, Mr. Webb particularly, his family has significant influence in this town. They own businesses, property. They're not people who forget slights easily. Warning delivered awkwardly, but sincerely. Jake appreciated the intent, if not the implication, that he should have minded his own business. I understand. Good night. Outside, evening had cooled, gentle breeze carrying the scent of the nearby Colorado River. Emma slipped her hand into his as they walked toward the parking lot, her fingers warm against his calloused palm. They walked in silence for a while, streetlights casting long shadows as they made their way toward the truck. Finally, Emma broke the quiet. Dad? Her voice soft, tilting her head to look up at him. Why did you stop being a SEAL? The question caught him off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Emma had heard him mention his service before, but rarely discussed details, and she'd never asked directly. Jake considered how much to tell her, how to frame the complexity of choices that led him from one life to another. After your mom got sick, I realized I needed to be home more. The teams, they take you away a lot, for long stretches, into dangerous places. Was it scary being a SEAL? Jake thought about the truth of it, the adrenaline that sharpened rather than paralyzed, the fear that made everything else fall away, the absolute focus when bullets started flying. Sometimes, but we train so much that when scary moments come, we know exactly what to do. That helps. Like tonight? Emma asked, connecting dots with a child's direct logic. You knew what to do to help that lady. Something like that, yes. Emma was quiet for a moment, digesting this. Then, with the abrupt subject change only children can manage seamlessly, "Did you see her face when you stood up for her? She looked at you like you were Superman." Jake laughed softly, tension of the evening finally beginning to dissipate. "I'm pretty sure that's not what she was thinking." "It was," Emma insisted, squeezing his hand tighter. "You're my hero, Dad. Always." Those words struck deeper than any applause or recognition from strangers ever could. They rooted in him like an anchor, reminding him of truth he already knew. It didn't take a battlefield or a uniform to be what the world needed. Sometimes it was simple as listening to your child, noticing someone in danger, refusing to stay silent. As they reached the truck, Jake opened the door for Emma, watching her climb inside with the ease of a child who trusted fully, completely. He looked once more at the restaurant behind them, its lights glowing warmly against the night. His phone buzzed as he started the engine. Unknown number. The text was simple, professional. "Thank you again for tonight. I won't forget it. Catherine Reed." Jake typed a brief reply. "You're welcome. Hope you're okay." He set the phone down, pulling out of the parking lot, but before they'd gone 2 blocks, it buzzed again. Different number, also unknown. "Shouldn't have embarrassed the Hartleys. Big mistake, hero." Jake's grip tightened on the steering wheel. He glanced at Emma in the rearview mirror, her head already drooping with post-dinner drowsiness. The quiet part of him that had awakened tonight, the part remembering what it meant to stand between threat and innocent, wasn't quite ready to go back to sleep. He deleted the message and drove home through Austin's Friday night traffic, already cataloging the ways his life had just become more complicated. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of Texas heat that made the air shimmer over asphalt. Jake pulled into the construction site at 6:30, earlier than necessary, but sleep had proven elusive. The threatening text kept cycling through his mind. Anonymous malice that felt more real than empty words should. The site sprawled across 2 acres of what would become a mixed-use development, retail on the ground floor, condos above. Right now it was mostly dirt and rebar, the skeleton of something not yet born. Jake's crew wouldn't arrive for another hour, which gave him time to walk the perimeter, check the foundation forms they'd set yesterday, make sure nobody had tampered with anything overnight. His boots crunched on gravel as he approached the construction trailer that served as the office. The door hung open, swinging slightly in the morning breeze. Jake's hand moved automatically to his hip, where a sidearm would have rested years ago, finding only empty belt. Inside, papers scattered across the floor. File cabinets stood open, their contents dumped and rifled through. Someone had been here, and recently, the coffee in the pot was still warm. Jake's phone buzzed. Mike Patterson, his second in command. "Boss, you at the site? You need to see something." "Already here. Someone hit the trailer." "Not just the trailer." Jake stepped back outside, following Mike's voice to the north section where they'd poured concrete 2 days ago. The foundation should have been setting clean, ready for inspection Monday morning. Instead, bright red spray paint covered the smooth gray surface in jagged letters 3 feet high. "Heroes not welcome." The vandalism was thorough, deliberate. Whoever did this had taken time, made sure the message would be seen, would cost money to fix. Jake pulled out his phone, snapping photos from multiple angles. Document everything. Evidence mattered when local police might not want to look too closely at who was responsible. Mike appeared from behind the portable toilets, hard hat pushed back, weathered face creased with concern. 52 years old, former Army Ranger, the kind of foreman who'd earned respect through decades of showing up and doing the work right. Security cameras? Disabled around 3 a.m. Pros, not kids. They knew what they were doing. Jake studied the spray paint, the deliberate spacing of letters, the uniformity suggesting stencils rather than freehand. This wasn't drunken vandalism. This was a message delivered with precision. Call the police. Get them out here to document. Then call Howard Bennett. Let him know we're going to be delayed on the inspection. Mike hesitated, pulling out his phone but not dialing yet. Boss, there's something else. You should check your social media. Jake didn't do social media, didn't have Facebook or Instagram or whatever platform was popular this week. But Mike was holding out his phone, screen showing a video with a view count climbing past 800,000. The footage was grainy, shot on someone's phone from across the Riverside Grill. Jake watched himself approach the bar, saw Marcus lunge, saw his own body move with economy learned through years of training. The video ended with Marcus on one knee, Jake's voice barely audible over the ambient noise, but the message clear enough. The comments section was a war zone. Half the people calling Jake a hero, the other half questioning why he'd gotten involved, speculating about what really happened, digging into his background. Someone had already identified him, posted his name, mentioned his construction company. Navy SEAL protects woman from drunk attackers, the headline under the video. 800,000 views and climbing. Christ. Jake handed the phone back. This is going to complicate things. Already has. Howard called me 20 minutes ago. Investors are asking questions. They saw the video, saw the news picking it up. They're nervous about association, about publicity. Translation: the money people were worried Jake's presence might bring unwanted attention, might complicate their permits and approvals in a city where the Hartley name carried weight in planning commissions and zoning boards. Jake's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. Make the calls. I'll handle Howard. As Mike walked toward the trailer, Jake's phone buzzed again. This time, a number he recognized, Emma's school. Mr. Morrison, this is Principal Roberts. I wanted to inform you of an incident this morning before school. A man claiming to be Emma's uncle attempted to sign her out early. Jake's blood went cold. What man? Security stopped him at the office. He gave the name Thomas Hartley. When we asked for identification and verified he wasn't on Emma's approved pickup list, he left. We have him on camera. I've already notified the police and we're implementing additional security protocols. The world narrowed to a pinpoint. They'd gone after his daughter. Not directly, not yet, but the message was unmistakable. We can reach her whenever we want. I'm coming to the school. Don't let Emma out of your sight. She's in class right now, completely safe. Security is posted at her classroom door. But Mr. Morrison, given the circumstances, you might want to consider keeping her home for a few days. Jake ended the call and immediately dialed Catherine Reed. She answered on the second ring, her voice professional, but carrying an edge of strain. I was about to call you. We need to talk. Can you meet me at my office in an hour? They went after Emma. Sent someone to her school this morning. Silence on the line. Then Catherine's voice came back harder, clipped. That changes things. I'm coming to you. Where are you? Jake gave her the construction site address and spent the next 40 minutes pacing the perimeter while Mike dealt with police and insurance adjusters. The cops who showed up were sympathetic but skeptical. Vandalism happened, they said. Probably kids who saw the video and thought they were being funny. The timing with the school incident was concerning, though. They'd increase patrols, they assured him. Keep an eye out. Jake didn't mention the threatening text. Couldn't prove who sent it, and bringing up the Hartley name would only make local cops more reluctant to dig deeper. Catherine's Audi pulled through the site gate at 8:15. She stepped out in tailored gray slacks and a white blouse, looking wildly out of place among the dirt and machinery. but she moved with purpose, expensive heels clicking on gravel as she approached. "Show me what happened." Jake walked her through it, the ransacked trailer, the spray paint, the timeline matching up too perfectly with the school incident. Catherine pulled out her own phone, taking photos, making notes with the efficiency of someone building a case. "This is harassment. Targeted, coordinated. Combined with the school incident, it establishes a pattern." She looked up from her phone. "I need to tell you something about Marcus Hartley. And his father." They moved to Jake's truck, sitting in the cab with the AC running against the climbing heat. Catherine pulled out her tablet, showing Jake a document she'd clearly spent hours compiling. David Hartley owns Hartley Development Group. They've been the dominant commercial real estate developer in Austin for 30 years. Strip malls, office parks, waterfront properties. Conservative estimate puts their holdings at $400 million. She swiped to the next page. Marcus is the only son. Studied architecture at UT Austin, never finished. His father pulled him into the family business when Marcus was 22. By all accounts, he hated it. Wanted to design buildings, not just own them. That's supposed to make me sympathetic? No, but it explains the drinking, the pattern of behavior. Another swipe. 5 settlements in the past 8 years, all sexual harassment, all with NDAs attached. Marcus would get drunk, get aggressive with women at company events or bars. Daddy would write checks, make it go away. Jake studied the dates, the amounts redacted, but the pattern clear. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I ran a background check on you too. Navy Cross for actions in Yemen, details classified. 15 years with the teams before honorable discharge 3 years ago. Your wife Rachel died of ovarian cancer 6 months before you left the service. You've been raising Emma alone ever since, working construction to stay close to home." The invasion felt clinical, necessary but uncomfortable. Catherine must have seen something in his face because her expression softened slightly. "I'm not trying to pry. I'm establishing that you're exactly what you appeared to be last night. Someone who saw a problem and acted. But the Hartleys see you as a threat to their reputation. That video going viral makes it harder for them to bury this the way they've buried everything else." So they're sending messages. Vandalism, school intimidation, warning me to back off. Or setting you up. Catherine's eyes were sharp, calculating. If you respond aggressively, if you confront Marcus or his father, they document it. Suddenly, you're the unstable veteran with PTSD, the violent troublemaker. They flip the narrative. Jake understood the strategy. He'd seen similar tactics overseas, enemy combatants provoking reactions, then using those reactions as propaganda. "What's your angle in this? Why help me?" Catherine was quiet for a moment, gaze shifting to the construction site beyond the windshield. "Because I froze last night. I've been taking self-defense classes for 2 years, telling myself I'd be ready if something like that happened again. And when it did, I froze. Just stood there until you intervened." "Again?" Mitchell and Barnes represent several major clients in Austin. About 18 months ago, one of them, a tech CEO, got too friendly at a firm dinner. Nothing as aggressive as last night, but enough. I reported it. Firm handled it quietly. The client issued an apology. But I've been paranoid since. Every late meeting, every business dinner, wondering if I'm safe or just lucky. She turned back to face him. "So when Marcus Hartley and his friend cornered me, every technique I'd learned evaporated. Then you showed up, and I realized something. I'm tired of being scared. Tired of men like Marcus thinking they can do whatever they want because their dads have money. That's a dangerous mindset when you're up against people with resources. Which is why I'm offering you legal representation, pro bono. If the Hartleys escalate, if they try to press charges or sue or whatever their next move is, I'll handle it. Jake studied her, seeing past the professional armor to the determination underneath. Your firm okay with that? Going after a client? Hartley Development isn't my client directly, and honestly, after last night, I don't care. Mitchell and Barnes can decide if they want to keep representing people who threaten children to settle grudges. The phone on Jake's dash buzzed. Howard Bennett. Jake answered on speaker. Jake, we need to discuss your status on the project. The vandalism, the video going viral, investors are concerned about liability exposure. I think it's best if you take a few days off, let things cool down. Jake's hand tightened on the steering wheel. We're 3 weeks from deadline on the foundation inspection. Mike's good, but he doesn't know the site like I do. Mike will handle it. This isn't permanent, just temporary. A week, maybe 2, until the attention dies down and we can assess damage control. You're suspending me because I stopped 2 drunk guys from harassing someone? Howard's sigh crackled through the speaker. I'm suspending you because a major client's family is making noise about pulling their business from our other project because insurance is concerned about the vandalism and potential future incidents. Because I've got investors who don't want their names associated with controversy. The calculation was clear, brutal in its simplicity. Jake had become a liability, and Howard Bennett didn't build a successful construction company by protecting liabilities over profits. Fine. I'll email you a status report for Mike to work from. But when this blows over, I expect my position back. Absolutely. You're the best site supervisor I've had in 20 years. This is just politics, Jake. You understand. Jake understood perfectly. He understood that principles mattered right up until they threatened profit margins. He understood that standing up for someone could cost you your livelihood. He understood that the world rewarded looking away. He ended the call and sat in silence, Catherine waiting without speaking. After a moment, Jake's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. How does unemployment feel, hero? This is just the beginning. By the time we're done, you won't be able to get hired as a day laborer in this town. Your daughter will watch her big, strong daddy crumble into nothing. Jake showed the text to Catherine, her jaw set, anger flashing across her features. That's evidence. Screenshot it, back it up. We're filing a police report and getting a restraining order. Against who? It's an anonymous number. Against Marcus Hartley specifically. The school incident gives us grounds, and this, she gestured at the vandalism, establishes a pattern of escalating harassment tied to last night's confrontation. Jake wanted to argue, to say it would only make things worse, but Catherine was already pulling out her phone, making calls with the rapid-fire efficiency of someone who knew exactly how to navigate the legal system. He drove to Emma's school, finding her in the principal's office with a counselor. She looked small in the adult-sized chair, legs dangling, but her face lit up when she saw him. Dad! Miss Roberts said I could stay in here and draw while we wait for you. Jake knelt beside her chair, checking her over even though he knew she was fine, hadn't even seen Thomas Hartley. Hey, sweetheart. Sorry about the confusion this morning. How would you like to spend the weekend at home? Just you and me. Emma's eyes narrowed slightly, that perceptive quality that missed nothing. This is because of the restaurant, isn't it? Because of those men? Principal Roberts moved to give them privacy, leaving Jake to navigate the conversation. He promised himself after Rachel died that he wouldn't lie to Emma, wouldn't treat her like she was too young to understand hard truths. One of them is upset about what happened. He's trying to make things difficult for us. But it's going to be okay. I promise. Are we in danger? Direct question, searching his face for truth. No. We're being careful, that's all. The man who came to school this morning didn't know you weren't allowed to pick you up. It was a mistake, but we're making sure it doesn't happen again. Emma processed this with the gravity of someone older than 10. I'm not scared. You always keep your promises. The trust in her voice, absolute and unquestioning, made Jake's chest tighten. He pulled her into a hug, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his chest. They spent the weekend locked down, Emma at home with doors secured, Jake alternating between installing better locks and researching the Hartley family online. What he found wasn't encouraging. David Hartley sat on the boards of 3 major Austin charities, had personal relationships with the mayor and city council, donated heavily to local campaigns, the kind of man who could make problems disappear with phone calls and checkbook. Sunday morning brought the article. Catherine called at 7 a.m., her voice tight. Local news just published a piece about you. They're implying you were involved in a controversial military operation that resulted in civilian casualties. Jake pulled up the article on his laptop while Emma ate cereal at the kitchen table. The headline made his stomach drop. Viral SEAL video raises questions about operator's past. The piece was carefully worded to avoid direct accusation while maximizing innuendo. An anonymous military source, almost certainly fabricated or deliberately misinterpreted, suggested Jake had participated in a Yemen operation under investigation for rules of engagement violations. No specifics, no names, just enough smoke to create doubt. The mission in question was still classified. Jake couldn't defend himself without violating security protocols, and whoever leaked this knew that, counted on it. This is David Hartley. Catherine's voice carried absolute certainty. He's got enough political connections to find someone willing to dig into your service record, twist what they find. Can't prove it. Don't need to prove it for a restraining order. We've got the school incident, the vandalism, now this clearly coordinated media attack. Judge will see the pattern. They met at the courthouse Monday morning, Catherine carrying a folder thick with documentation. She'd compiled everything: screenshots of the viral video, photos of the vandalized construction site, security footage from Emma's school showing Thomas Hartley attempting the pickup, the timeline of escalation. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and reading glasses on a chain, reviewed the materials with practiced efficiency. When she looked up, her expression was carefully neutral. Ms. Reed, you're asking for a temporary restraining order against Marcus Hartley, requiring him to stay 100 yards from Mr. Morrison, his daughter, their residence, and the daughter's school. Based on what evidence of direct threat? Catherine walked through it methodically, the confrontation at the restaurant captured on multiple phones, the vandalism occurring within 24 hours. Thomas Hartley's school attempt coordinated to happen simultaneously. The anonymous threatening texts that couldn't be directly traced, but fit the pattern. Your Honor, the Hartley family has significant influence in Austin. Mr. Morrison did nothing wrong Friday night except prevent a harassment situation from escalating. Since then, he's faced coordinated retaliation designed to intimidate him and threaten his daughter. The pattern is clear, the escalation is concerning, and Mr. Morrison has every right to protect his family. The judge made notes, asked questions, finally looked up at Jake directly. Mr. Morrison, you understand that if I grant this order, you cannot initiate contact with Marcus Hartley in any way. You cannot approach him, speak to him, or communicate through third parties. Violation could result in your arrest. I understand. I don't want contact with him. I want him to stay away from my daughter. And you were, in fact, involved in an operation in Yemen during your SEAL service. Yes, ma'am. The details are classified, but I can state unequivocally that no investigation into rules of engagement violations occurred. The article's source is either fabricated or deliberately mischaracterizing the mission. The judge nodded, making a final note. I'm granting a temporary restraining order valid for 2 weeks. Mr. Hartley must maintain 100 yards distance from you, your daughter, Emma Morrison, your residence, and Oakwood Elementary School. If he violates this order, call police immediately. We'll schedule a hearing in 2 weeks to determine if the order should be extended. Ms. Reed, see the clerk on your way out. Outside the courthouse, Catherine's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, expression shifting from satisfaction to concern. My office. I need to take this. Jake watched her walk a few paces away, her posture stiffening as she listened. The call lasted 3 minutes. When she returned, her professional mask had cracked enough to show genuine worry underneath. The partners are calling an emergency meeting this afternoon. Someone, and I'll give you one guess who, has informed Mitchell and Barnes that if I continue representing you, Hartley Development will pull all their business from the firm. That's roughly $8 million annually in billings. Tell them you'll drop me as a client. No. The word came out flat, absolute. I've spent 7 years building my reputation at that firm, but I won't be bullied into abandoning someone who did the right thing. If the partners choose Hartley money over basic ethics, then I don't want to work there anyway. That's easy to say now. Harder when you're actually unemployed. Catherine's laugh held no humor. I've got headhunters calling me monthly. Firms in Houston, Dallas, even out of state. I stay at Mitchell & Barnes because I like Austin, because I've built relationships here. But I'm not irreplaceable to them, and they're not irreplaceable to me. Jake's phone buzzed. Mike Patterson. Boss, you need to know. Howard just called me. He's letting you go. Not suspension, termination. Says the investors demanded it after that article came out this morning. He's offering 3 months severance, full benefits through year-end, and a good reference. But you're off the project effective immediately. The words landed with the dull impact of inevitability. Jake had seen this coming since the vandalism, but hearing it confirmed still felt like taking a punch. Tell Howard I'll email him my final project notes for the inspection. And Mike, thanks for the heads up. He ended the call and stood on the courthouse steps, Catherine watching him with concern. They fired you. Yeah. We can fight that. Wrongful termination, retaliation for let it go. Jake cut her off, not unkindly. Howard's got legitimate business reasons. The investors pressured him, and he chose profits over principles. That's his right as an owner. Fighting it just keeps me tied to something I don't want anymore anyway. Catherine studied him for a long moment. You're taking this remarkably well. I knew what I was doing Friday night. Knew it might cost me something. I made the choice anyway. Jake looked out at the Austin skyline, the glass and steel towers where men like David Hartley pulled strings and moved pieces on boards invisible to regular people. What I didn't account for was them going after Emma. That's where they crossed a line. So what now? Now I take care of my daughter, make sure she's safe, and I wait to see what the Hartleys do next. Catherine's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it, jaw tightening. The partners' meeting is in an hour. I need to go prepare my defense. Good luck. I don't need luck. I need them to remember they're supposed to be lawyers, not accountants. She started toward her car, then turned back. Jake, regardless of what happens at my firm, I meant what I said. I'm representing you. Pro bono if necessary. These people don't get to threaten children because someone stood up to them. Jake watched her drive away, then headed to his truck. His phone showed 17 missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Probably reporters chasing the story, looking for quotes about the Yemen mission he couldn't discuss. He ignored them all and drove to pick up Emma from Mrs. Wilson's house, where she'd spent the morning playing with a neighbor's golden retriever while Jake dealt with courts and consequences. Emma was in the backyard throwing a tennis ball for the dog when Jake arrived. She ran to him immediately, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Did you fix the problem with the bad men?" "Working on it, sweetheart. But I've got some news. I'm not going to be working at the construction site for a while, which means I'll be around more. We can have breakfast together every day before school." Emma pulled back, searching his face. "Did you get fired because you helped that lady?" No point lying. She'd figure it out eventually, and dishonesty would only make it worse. Sort of. It's complicated. But sometimes doing the right thing has consequences. That doesn't make it any less right. Emma nodded slowly, processing. Like when Jamie got in trouble for telling the teacher that Tyler was cheating on the math test? The other kids called her a snitch, but she still did the right thing. Exactly like that. They drove home through Monday afternoon traffic, Jake's mind cataloging next steps. Update his resume. Reach out to contacts in the construction industry. Start looking at job listings in Houston or San Antonio in case Austin became untenable. But first, get Emma settled. Make sure she felt safe. Maintain some semblance of normalcy while their world shifted beneath them. His phone rang as they pulled into the driveway. Ryan Sullivan, the former Marine from Friday night. Jake debated ignoring it, then curiosity won out. "This is Jake." "Jake Morrison, I need to talk to you. About Marcus. It's important." Ryan's voice carried urgency, stress bleeding through each word. "Can we meet? Somewhere public. I've got information you need to hear." Jake sat across from Ryan Sullivan at a corner table in Zilker Park's outdoor cafe. Emma safely at Mrs. Wilson's house with explicit instructions not to open the door for anyone. The park stretched green and sprawling around them, joggers passing on trails, families claiming picnic spots under live oaks. Public enough that violence seemed unlikely, open enough that Jake could see threats approaching. Ryan looked worse than he had Friday night. Unshaven, circles under bloodshot eyes, hands trembling slightly as he gripped his coffee cup. The Marine bearing was still there beneath the wreckage, but barely. "I'm 2 weeks sober," Ryan started without preamble. "Been going to meetings, seeing a therapist. After Friday, after watching that video of myself standing there while Marcus harassed that woman, I couldn't pretend anymore. I'd become someone I didn't recognize." Jake waited, letting the silence stretch. Ryan hadn't asked to meet just to share his recovery story. "Marcus is planning something. Something beyond the vandalism and the school thing." Ryan's fingers drummed against the cup. "I heard him on the phone with his father yesterday. They're not backing down. They're escalating." "Why tell me this? Marcus is your friend." "Was my friend." Past tense. Ryan's jaw tightened. There's a line between loyalty and being complicit in something that crosses every moral boundary. Threatening a kid? That's over the line. Jake studied him, looking for deception and finding only exhausted honesty. "What's the plan?" "I don't have all the details, but David Hartley is involved now, not just Marcus. The old man sees this as protecting the family reputation, teaching a lesson about what happens when people challenge them." Ryan leaned forward, voice dropping. "David's got connections everywhere. City council, planning commission, police department. He's also sick. Heart condition. Doctors told him 6 months ago he needs to step back, reduce stress. Instead, he's fixated on this, on making sure his son doesn't face consequences. So it's not just wounded pride. It's a dying man trying to secure his legacy. Exactly. Which makes it more dangerous. David doesn't care about long-term fallout because he won't be around to see it. He just wants the Hartley name protected, wants Marcus safe from the consequences of his own actions. Jake absorbed this, mind working through implications. A desperate man with resources and political leverage was more unpredictable than a calculating one. What else? They hired a private investigator to dig into your background. Military service, personal life, finances, looking for anything they can weaponize. That article about Yemen? That came from information the PI dug up and fed to a sympathetic reporter. I figured. And they've got lawyers looking at options. Civil suit for assault, even though the video clearly shows Marcus throwing the first punch. They think they can twist it, make you the aggressor.
Ryan paused, conflict playing across his face.
There's more. I overheard Marcus talking about Emma. Something about showing him what really matters and making it personal. I don't think he'd physically hurt her, but...
Jake's hands flattened on the table, knuckles white.
But what?
But I don't know what he's capable of anymore. The drinking, the humiliation from that video going viral, his father pushing him to be more aggressive. He's not thinking straight.
The cafe noise faded to background static. Jake's mind shifted into tactical mode, running scenarios, assessing threats, calculating responses. Emma's safety was non-negotiable. Everything else could be rebuilt, replaced, sacrificed if necessary. Why are you really doing this? Coming to me, betraying your friend. Ryan was quiet for a moment, staring into his coffee like it held answers.
Because when my wife left me 6 months ago, she said I'd changed. Did I become someone who looked away from problems instead of facing them? I told myself she was wrong, that she didn't understand. Then Friday night, I watched myself on that video, drunk, enabling Marcus, part of the problem. And I realized she was right. He looked up, meeting Jake's eyes. I'm leaving Austin. Got a job offer in Houston with my brother's construction company. By the time Marcus figures out I warned you, I'll be gone. But I needed to do this first. Needed to at least try to be the person I used to be before the drinking and the bad decisions. Jake recognized authentic remorse when he saw it. Your brother know about the drinking? Yeah. Part of the job offer is mandatory AA attendance, random testing, the works. He's giving me a chance to get clean for real, not just white-knuckle it. Ryan pulled out his phone, showing Jake a screenshot of an email thread. This is from yesterday. Marcus sent it to his cousin Thomas, the guy who showed up at Emma's school. The email was brief, clinical. Plan B if restraining order interferes. Make it embarrassing, not dangerous. School assembly or playground, maximum witnesses to Daddy's failure to protect. Jake photographed the screen with his own phone. Can you forward that to me? Already did, from a burner account, along with everything else I could grab from Marcus's messages before he noticed. Ryan stood, leaving $20 on the table for coffee neither of them had finished. I'm sorry. For Friday. For all of it. I hope you and your daughter stay safe. He walked away before Jake could respond, disappearing into the afternoon crowd of park visitors. Jake sat alone, processing what he'd learned. The Hartleys weren't just harassing him. They were planning something public, designed to humiliate him in front of Emma's school community, to demonstrate their reach and his powerlessness. His phone buzzed. Catherine. The partners voted 7-3 in favor of keeping me, terminating the Hartley contracts. I still have a job. Relief mixed with surprise. They chose ethics over $8 million in billings? The managing partner pointed out that if we rolled over for client intimidation, we'd set a precedent that would haunt the firm for years. Plus, several partners were uncomfortable with how aggressive the Hartleys were being. Threatening children doesn't play well even in corporate law. Catherine's voice carried grim satisfaction. Of course, David Hartley is furious. His attorney already sent a letter threatening to sue us for breach of contract. Will that stick? No. The engagement letter has a clause allowing either party to terminate for ethical conflicts. But it means war. The Hartleys will badmouth us to every potential client, try to freeze us out of deals, make life difficult however they can. Jake walked toward his truck, phone pressed to his ear. I met with Ryan Sullivan. Marcus, his friend from the restaurant. He's trying to make amends, gave me intel on what the Hartleys are planning. How reliable? Reliable enough. He forwarded emails from Marcus discussing Plan B involving Emma's school, something public designed to humiliate me in front of witnesses. Catherine's silence stretched for several seconds. That's conspiracy to commit harassment at minimum. With those emails, we can go back to the judge, get the restraining order extended and strengthened, maybe even get Marcus arrested for violating it through intermediaries. I need to get Emma somewhere safe first. The restraining order is just paper. It won't stop someone determined enough. Where can she go? Jake thought about his options. Limited family. Rachel's sister lived in Dallas but worked 80-hour weeks, couldn't provide real security. Friends were scarce after years of deployments and then single parenting. The teams had taught him to be self-reliant, to trust only those who'd earned it through shared hardship. I'll figure something out. Can you set up another meeting with the judge? Show her the emails, get the order strengthened. I'll file the motion this afternoon. And Jake, I've been making calls. Talked to a journalist friend at the Austin Chronicle, Alex Stone. He's been trying to expose the Hartley family for months. Corruption in their development deals, suspicious permits, harassment complaints that got buried. With what we have now, he thinks he can build a story that shifts the narrative. That'll just make them angrier. They're already doing everything they can to destroy you. Maybe it's time to fight back with publicity instead of just defending. Catherine's voice carried steel underneath the professional courtesy. They're used to victims who stay quiet, who take the settlements and sign the NDAs. What if instead we make noise? Make it harder for them to operate in shadows. Jake reached his truck, climbing in and starting the engine. Let me think about it. Right now I need to focus on Emma. Understood. I'll call you after I file the motion. The drive back to Mrs. Wilson's took 15 minutes through afternoon traffic. Jake used the time to call Brandon Cole, a former SEAL teammate who'd settled in Austin after leaving the teams. Brandon ran a private security company, mostly executive protection and corporate consulting. Jake Morrison. Long time. Brandon's voice carried the easy confidence of someone comfortable with violence, but hoping to avoid it. Saw you on the news. Navy Cross recipient stops drunk rich guys from harassing someone. Good work. It's gotten complicated. I need a favor. Name it. Jake outlined the situation, the harassment, the school incident, the emails Ryan had forwarded. Brandon listened without interrupting, asking pointed questions when Jake finished. You need security for your daughter and surveillance on the Hartleys to document any violations of the restraining order. I can do both, but it's not cheap. Executive protection runs $500 a day minimum, surveillance another $300. I've got severance from the construction job. 3 months salary, roughly $30,000. How long will that cover? 6 weeks if we're smart about deployment. Longer if the Hartleys back off once they see you're protected. Brandon paused. But Jake, you know this is just buying time. Unless something fundamentally changes, unless they face real consequences or find a reason to move on, they'll keep coming. I know. I'm working on the fundamental change part. Right now, I just need Emma safe while I handle it. Give me 4 hours to organize a team. Meanwhile, you should consider getting her out of Austin for a few days, somewhere the Hartleys can't reach, where she can just be a kid without worrying about strangers at her school. Jake thought about that as he pulled up to Mrs. Wilson's house. Emma sat on the front porch with the golden retriever, reading a book aloud to the dog like he understood every word. The normalcy of the scene, the afternoon sunlight, the sound of her voice, the absolute innocence, made Jake's chest tighten. She deserved better than this. Deserved a childhood not shadowed by adult conflicts and dangerous men with wounded pride. Mrs. Wilson met him at the door, 70-ish, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Everything all right? You look troubled." "Having some issues with people from that restaurant incident. Need to take Emma somewhere safe for a while. Maybe out of town." "I've got a cabin up at Lake Travis. 2 bedrooms, fully stocked, nobody around for miles. You're welcome to use it as long as you need." She pressed keys into his hand before he could protest. "Go pack what you need and head up there tonight. I'll tell anyone who asks that Emma's with relatives in Houston." Jake felt gratitude well up, unexpected and sharp. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep that little girl safe. And if those Hartley boys give you trouble, you tell them Margaret Wilson has been voting in this city for 53 years and knows where all the bodies are buried." She smiled, but her eyes were hard. Sometimes old ladies can cause more problems than ex-SEALs. Back home, Jake explained to Emma that they were taking a spontaneous camping trip. She accepted this with the adaptability of children who trusted their parents, packing her favorite books and stuffed animals while Jake loaded practical supplies, food, first aid kit, the emergency bag he'd kept ready since leaving the teams. His phone buzzed as they finished loading the truck. "Catherine, Judge approved an emergency hearing for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. She wants to see those emails and hear about the escalation. If we can prove Marcus is coordinating through third parties to violate the restraining order, she'll issue an arrest warrant." "I'll be there. Where are you going to be tonight?" "Somewhere safe. I'll text you the location once we're there, but keep it to yourself." Catherine understood immediately. Of course. And Jake, Alex Stone wants to run his article Sunday. It'll detail the Hartley family's history, the harassment settlements, their use of political influence to bury complaints. Combined with your story in the video, it should shift public perception significantly. Do it. If we're fighting, we might as well fight to win. The drive to Lake Travis took 90 minutes northwest of Austin, civilization thinning to scattered developments and then to nothing but hills and cedar. Mrs. Wilson's cabin sat at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by live oaks, with a view of the lake through the trees. Emma explored with the enthusiasm of a child freed from routine, claiming the smaller bedroom and arranging her stuffed animals on the bed with careful precision. Jake checked the perimeter, old habits asserting themselves. One access road, easily monitored, clear sight lines in all directions. Decent defensible position if it came to that, though he prayed it wouldn't. His phone showed 1 bar of service, enough for emergencies, but not enough for constant communication. Good. The disconnection would do them both good. They spent the evening on the cabin's porch, Emma reading while Jake made dinner from the supplies Mrs. Wilson had left: pasta, jarred sauce, salad from a bag. Simple food that tasted better for the quiet surrounding them, the absence of threats and complications. As darkness fell, Emma looked up from her book. "Dad, are we hiding?" The directness of the question demanded honesty. "We're being careful. Those men I helped the lady get away from, they're upset about it. So we're taking a break until things calm down." "Are they bad men, like in movies?" Jake considered how to answer. They're men who think money and power mean they don't have to follow the same rules as everyone else. And when someone proves them wrong, they get angry. Emma nodded, processing this with her usual gravity. But you did the right thing, so they're wrong to be angry. That's exactly right. But sometimes people being wrong doesn't stop them from being dangerous. I'm not scared. You always protect me. The absolute faith in her voice created a weight in Jake's chest. He was one man against a family with resources and connections, fighting battles on multiple fronts with diminishing options. But to Emma, he was invincible. Her father, the former SEAL, the man who stepped into danger and walked away unscathed. He couldn't let her see his doubt, couldn't let her know how precarious their situation had become. Get some sleep, sweetheart. Tomorrow we'll explore the lake, maybe go fishing. She hugged him goodnight and disappeared into her room. Jake sat on the porch long after she'd fallen asleep, watching the lake reflect moonlight, listening to the night sounds of rural Texas. His phone buzzed occasionally with messages he'd deal with tomorrow. Brandon confirming security arrangements, Catherine sending case law about restraining order violations, Mike Patterson checking in about the construction site. Around midnight, a new message arrived from an unknown number. Jake almost deleted it unread, then recognized the area code. Same as Ryan Sullivan's call earlier. Marcus knows I talked to you. He's cutting me out, but I heard enough before he froze me out. Something's happening Monday at Emma's school. Assembly program. Lots of parents attending. That's when they're planning whatever they've got planned. Get her out of there. Jake forwarded the message to Catherine and Brandon, then sat in the darkness considering his options. Running only bought time. Eventually, he'd have to return to Austin. Emma would have to go back to school, and the Hartleys would still be there with their money and influence and burning need for revenge. Unless something changed the equation, unless the cost of continuing their harassment became higher than the satisfaction of seeing him broken. The article Alex Stone was writing could do that. Public scrutiny, questions about their business practices, pressure from other victims emboldened to come forward. It wouldn't destroy the Hartley empire, but it might make them decide Jake Morrison wasn't worth the trouble. Or it might enrage them further, convince them they needed to crush him completely as an example. Jake pulled out his laptop, using the cabin's satellite internet to research the Hartley family more thoroughly. What he found painted a picture of generational wealth built on aggressive development tactics and strategic political donations. David Hartley had transformed his father's modest construction company into a real estate empire through a combination of vision, ruthlessness, and well-placed bribes disguised as campaign contributions. Marcus was the weak link. Where David had built his fortune through calculated risks and business acumen, Marcus had coasted on his father's name, failed at the architecture career he'd actually wanted, been pulled into a business he resented. The drinking was escape. The harassment was misplaced anger at a life that hadn't turned out the way he'd imagined. None of which excused his actions, but it helped Jake understand the psychology. Marcus wasn't just attacking Jake. He was lashing out at his own failures, his own powerlessness in the face of his father's expectations. Around 2 a.m., exhaustion finally pulled Jake towards sleep. He left his bedroom door open, positioned himself where he could see Emma's room and the cabin's entrance. Old habits from deployments where a threat could come from any direction at any time. He woke to Emma shaking his shoulder, sunlight streaming through windows. "Dad, there's someone at the door." Jake was on his feet instantly, adrenaline cutting through the fog of sleep. He moved to the window, keeping Emma behind him, and saw Brandon Cole standing on the porch in jeans and a tactical vest, hands clearly visible. "It's okay, he's a friend." Jake opened the door. "You're early." "Early is on time when you're expecting trouble." Brandon nodded toward Emma. "You must be the VIP. I'm Brandon. Your dad and I used to work together." Emma studied him with that assessing look children have, deciding whether adults are trustworthy. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she nodded. "Were you a SEAL too?" "I was. 12 years. Now I keep people safe in boring ways that don't involve swimming in cold water or jumping out of airplanes." "That sounds smarter." Brandon laughed. "Your daughter's got good judgment. Can we talk outside?" Jake followed him to the porch while Emma settled in front of the TV with cartoons. Brandon's expression was grim. "I put a team on the Hartley residence overnight. High-end surveillance, telephoto cameras, the works. Got some interesting footage." He pulled out a tablet showing Jake time-stamped photos. 3 a.m. Marcus Hartley leaving his place with 2 men I've identified as personal security. They drove to an office building downtown, met with someone my guy recognized as a PI named Gerald Chen. Real piece of work. Specializes in digging up dirt for ugly divorces and corporate espionage. Getting more ammunition for their campaign? Maybe. Or planning something more direct. Brandon swiped to the next photo. 4:30 a.m. They're still in the meeting. Then this. He showed Jake a photo of Marcus and the 2 security guys loading something into a van. That's professional video equipment. High-end stuff, the kind you use for depositions or surveillance. Jake felt cold understanding settle over him. They're going to record something. Whatever they're planning at Emma's school, they want it documented. Makes sense if the goal is humiliation rather than physical harm. Create a spectacle, record it, spread it online to undermine your credibility and demonstrate their reach. Brandon's jaw tightened. These people are sick. Going after a 10-year-old girl to settle a grudge. Can you stop them? Monday at the school? I can provide security, keep Emma safe, document any violations of the restraining order. But if they do something technically legal, hire actors to make a scene, stage some embarrassing stunt that doesn't involve direct contact, I can't prevent it without risking assault charges myself. Jake's mind worked through the problem. The Hartleys were smart, staying just inside legal boundaries while maximizing damage. They'd learned from Marcus's direct approach at the restaurant, understood that crude violence brought consequences. This was surgical, calculated to destroy Jake's reputation and peace of mind without giving him legal recourse. What if Emma's not there? If she's sick, stays home that day? Buys you time but doesn't solve the problem. They'll just reschedule, try something else. You can't keep her home indefinitely. Jake's phone buzzed. Catherine. Court in 2 hours. Can you make it? I'll be there. Emma's with security. Brandon nodded. I've got a woman on my team, former Army MP, great with kids. Jennifer Walsh. She's meeting me here in 30 minutes. Between the 2 of us, Emma will be fine. You go deal with the legal side. The drive back to Austin took 1 hour and 40 minutes, Jake pushing the speed limit on empty highways. He made it to the courthouse with 10 minutes to spare, finding Catherine outside the courtroom in a charcoal suit, hair pulled back severe and professional. I've got the emails Ryan forwarded, the surveillance photos Brandon provided, and a sworn affidavit from you detailing the pattern of harassment. The judge should have everything she needs to strengthen the order and possibly issue an arrest warrant for Marcus. They entered the courtroom as the clerk called their case. Judge Martinez, the same woman who'd granted the initial restraining order, reviewed the new evidence with the same careful attention. When she finished, she looked up at Catherine. Ms. Reed, this is deeply concerning. The emails clearly show Mr. Marcus Hartley coordinating with family members to circumvent the restraining order. and the surveillance evidence suggests planning for some kind of confrontation at the child's school. David Hartley's attorney, an expensive suit named Robert Fletcher, stood smoothly. Your Honor, these emails are unverified, likely fabricated by someone with a grudge against my client. The surveillance photos show my client meeting with business associates, nothing nefarious. Mr. Morrison is attempting to use the courts to continue his harassment of the Hartley family after his unprovoked assault on Marcus Hartley at a restaurant. Judge Martinez's expression didn't change, but Jake caught the flash of irritation in her eyes. Counselor, I've watched the video of the restaurant incident. Multiple witnesses confirm Marcus Hartley initiated physical contact while Mr. Morrison was attempting to protect a woman from harassment. Unless you have new evidence contradicting that, I suggest you adjust your characterization. Fletcher's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Of course, Your Honor. However, the restraining order is preventing my client from conducting normal business activities, and these new accusations are based on dubious evidence. The evidence is sufficient for me to extend and strengthen the restraining order. Marcus Hartley is now prohibited from any direct or indirect contact with Mr. Morrison or his daughter, including through intermediaries or third parties. The distance requirement increases to 200 yards, and any violation will result in immediate arrest. Fletcher's objection was sharp. Your Honor! Additionally, I'm ordering Marcus Hartley to surrender any firearms he owns to local authorities for the duration of this order, and to submit to weekly check-ins with a probation officer. If he violates any provision, bail will be set at $500,000. Jake felt tension ease slightly. The strengthened order wouldn't stop a determined enemy, but it raised the stakes significantly. Marcus would have to weigh his desire for revenge against the very real possibility of arrest and prosecution. As they left the courtroom, Fletcher caught up to them in the hallway. Ms. Reed, Mr. Morrison, a word? Catherine's expression was ice. You can communicate through proper channels, Mr. Fletcher. This is off the record. Professional courtesy. Fletcher glanced around, making sure they were relatively alone. David Hartley is dying. Heart failure, maybe 6 months left. He's not thinking clearly, and Marcus is caught between wanting to please his father and his own self-destructive impulses. If you push this publicly, if you humiliate them in the media, they'll respond with everything they have. It won't end well for anyone. Jake stepped closer, voice low and hard. They went after my daughter. They vandalized my workplace, cost me my job, tried to intimidate a 10-year-old child. And you're suggesting I should back off out of sympathy for a dying bully and his train wreck son? I'm suggesting you're in a fight you can't win. David Hartley has spent 30 years building relationships in this city. One phone call and your construction license gets held up in permitting hell for months. Another call and suddenly no firm in Texas will hire you. He can make you unemployable. Make your life so difficult you'll want to leave Austin just to escape. Catherine's voice cut like a blade. Is that a threat, counselor? It's reality. The Hartleys have resources you can't match and motivation you can't overcome. David wants to protect his son and his legacy before he dies. Marcus wants revenge for public humiliation. Neither of them will stop until they've destroyed you or you've fled. Jake studied Fletcher, seeing calculation beneath the concern. What do they want? Settlement? Public apology? They want you to drop the restraining order, issue a statement admitting you overreacted at the restaurant, and disappear from Austin quietly. In exchange, they'll leave you and your daughter alone. David will write a check for $200,000, relocation expenses, lost wages, whatever you want to call it. You take the money, move to another city, start fresh. And if I refuse? Fletcher's expression went flat. Then Monday, at your daughter's school assembly, Marcus and his associates will stage a very public demonstration of your failures as a father and a protector. They've hired actors, rented equipment, planned a spectacle designed to humiliate you in front of Emma's entire school community. It'll be filmed, uploaded, spread across social media. And there's nothing illegal about it. No contact with Emma, no violation of the restraining order, just free speech and performance art. Catherine's hands clenched into fists. You're threatening to traumatize a child to settle a grown man's wounded ego. I'm delivering a message from my clients. You have until Sunday evening to decide. After that, the offer expires, and whatever happens, happens. He walked away before either of them could respond. Jake stood in the courthouse hallway, feeling the walls close in. They'd mapped the battlefield carefully, knowing about the school assembly, knowing Jake would be there to watch Emma perform in her class presentation, planning maximum humiliation with minimum legal exposure. Catherine's voice shook with rage. We get Alex Stone to run his article tonight instead of Sunday. We blow this wide open, make it too toxic for the Hartleys to proceed. They'll just change tactics, find another way, another time. As long as they're motivated and resourced, they'll keep coming. So what do we do? Jake thought about Emma at the lake cabin, reading to Brandon's guard dog of a colleague, oblivious to the chess match being played with her well-being as the prize. Thought about Rachel in her hospital bed, making him promise to leave the war behind, to be the father Emma needed. He'd kept that promise for 3 years, built a quiet life, stayed clear of violence and conflict, focused on raising his daughter in peace. But sometimes peace wasn't possible. Sometimes the only way through was forward, into the fire, accepting the burns as the price of protecting what mattered. We fight. Not the way they expect, not with money or lawyers or public statements. We fight the way I know how. Jake pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts until he found what he needed. I've got former teammates all over Texas. People who owe me favors, who understand what it means when someone threatens your family. If the Hartleys want war, we'll give them war, just not the kind they're prepared for. Catherine grabbed his arm. Jake, if you do something illegal, if you hurt Marcus or anyone else, you'll lose Emma. The courts will take her away, and every sacrifice you've made will mean nothing. I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about pressure. About making their lives as complicated and difficult as they're making mine. About exposing every dirty deal, every bribed official, every buried complaint. The Hartleys have skeletons. Everyone with that much money and power does. We just need to find them and drag them into the light. That's what Alex's article is supposed to do. One article won't be enough. We need a campaign. Multiple journalists, multiple angles, sustained pressure. And we need to flip someone on the inside, an employee, a former business partner, someone who knows where the bodies are buried and is willing to talk. Catherine pulled out her own phone. I know a forensic accountant who specializes in real estate fraud. If the Hartleys have been cooking books or evading taxes, she'll find it. And I've got contacts at the IRS who owe me favors from cases I worked as a prosecutor. They stood in the courthouse hallway, a former SEAL and a corporate attorney, planning asymmetric warfare against an enemy with superior resources but inferior motivation. The Hartleys wanted revenge and reputation. Jake and Catherine wanted survival and justice. Different goals required different tactics. Jake's phone buzzed. Brandon. You need to see this. Sending you a video now. The file came through, 15 seconds of footage time-stamped 2 hours ago. It showed Marcus Hartley at a coffee shop, meeting with someone Jake recognized from Emma's school, one of the parent volunteers who organized assembly programs. The audio was muffled, but Brandon had enhanced it enough to catch fragments. Monday morning, 11 a.m. Surprise for the Morrison family. Camera positions. Make sure everyone sees. Marcus handed the woman an envelope, thick enough to suggest cash rather than a check. She slipped it into her purse with practiced ease, already planning how to help destroy a 10-year-old girl's sense of safety for money from a man nursing wounded pride. Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. Not anger. Anger was hot, volatile, counterproductive. This was colder, sharper. The mindset he'd developed over 15 years of hunting terrorists and extracting hostages. The mental state where emotion became fuel rather than distraction. The Hartleys had made a fundamental miscalculation. They thought he was just a construction worker, a single dad trying to protect his daughter, someone who'd fold under pressure and threats. They'd forgotten, or never understood, what it meant to be a SEAL, that the quiet men doing ordinary jobs sometimes carried extraordinary capabilities, waiting dormant until circumstance demanded their return. Sunday would bring Alex Stone's article. Monday would bring whatever spectacle the Hartleys had planned. But between now and then, Jake Morrison had 48 hours to remind Austin's most powerful family that some fights weren't won with money and influence. Sometimes they were won by men willing to do whatever necessary to protect what they loved. Jake spent the next 48 hours transforming from hunted to hunter. Brandon's team documented every movement the Hartleys made, Marcus meeting with the school volunteer, purchasing video equipment, coordinating with hired actors. Jennifer Walsh integrated herself into Emma's school community, positioning herself as the new parent volunteer, gaining access to assembly planning meetings where the trap was being set. Catherine worked her legal network with surgical precision. The forensic accountant found irregularities in 3 Hartley development deals. Permits approved despite code violations. Environmental waivers granted after suspiciously timed donations to city council members. The IRS contact flagged transactions worth investigating. Each discovery became ammunition. Alex Stone's article dropped Sunday morning, front page of the Austin Chronicle website. Empire of Silence: How the Hartley Family Built Fortune on Buried Complaints. The piece was devastating. Meticulously sourced, legally bulletproof, morally damning. Within hours, 2 more women contacted Catherine with their own Marcus Hartley stories, willing to go on record now that someone else had broken the silence. By Sunday evening, the narrative had shifted. Social media buzzed not about Jake Morrison assaulting a drunk businessman, but about the Hartley family's pattern of harassment and intimidation. Local news picked up the story. A city councilman who'd received Hartley donations announced he was returning the money and calling for an investigation into development permits. Jake received Fletcher's response at 9 p.m. Sunday. Offer withdrawn. You've made your choice. Tomorrow your daughter learns what happens when nobodies challenge their betters. Monday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. Jake dressed carefully, jeans, button-down shirt, the appearance of a concerned father attending his daughter's school assembly, nothing tactical or threatening. Brandon and Jennifer were already positioned, cameras ready to document everything. Emma's school assembly began at 11. Parents filled the auditorium, children seated in rows by grade level. Emma sat with her 4th grade class, unaware of the performance about to unfold around her. Principal Roberts welcomed everyone, introduced the guest speaker, a local author talking about courage and standing up for what's right. The irony wasn't lost on Jake. 15 minutes into the presentation, the doors at the back of the auditorium opened. 3 people entered, 2 men and a woman, all wearing Austin Police Department uniforms that looked authentic from a distance. They walked down the center aisle with official bearing, stopping at Jake's row. Jake Morrison? The lead officer's voice carried across the suddenly silent auditorium. We need you to come with us. There's been an incident involving your daughter's safety. Jake stayed seated. Show me your badges. The officer reached for his belt, pulling out what looked like official credentials. Sir, we don't have time for this. Your daughter's in danger. We need to move, now. Emma stood up in her row, confusion and fear crossing her face. Other parents whispered, children craned to see. Phones came out, exactly as the Hartleys had planned. Document Jake Morrison refusing to help his endangered daughter, make him look negligent or paranoid. Those aren't real officers. Jake's voice carried calm certainty. And my daughter is right there, completely safe. Principal Roberts moved toward the front of the auditorium, speaking into a radio. Real police officers appeared from the side exits, advancing on the fake cops with weapons drawn. On the ground, now! The actors froze, calculating whether their payment was worth arrest. The decision took 3 seconds before they complied, dropping to prone positions while real APD officers secured them. Brandon appeared from the back row, camera in hand. Got everything. The van outside with Marcus Hartley and his video crew, the coordination signals, all of it. But Jake's attention was on Emma. She sat perfectly still, understanding dawning across her young face, not fear, but recognition that her father had known, had protected her, had turned the trap back on those who'd set it. The auditorium erupted in chaos, parents shouting questions, children confused and frightened, Principal Roberts trying to restore order while real police questioned the actors who'd been hired to humiliate a single father in front of his daughter's entire school. Jake walked calmly to Emma's row, kneeling beside her seat. You okay, sweetheart? You knew they were coming. Not a question, just quiet observation. You were ready. Always. That's what dads do. Outside, police arrested Marcus Hartley and his videographer in the van, charging them with conspiracy to file a false police report, criminal impersonation, and violation of the restraining order. The video equipment captured their entire planning conversation, Marcus explaining exactly how they'd humiliate Jake Morrison, how they'd make him look incompetent in front of everyone who mattered. Evidence admissible in court. Career ending for Marcus. Reputation destroying for the Hartley name. By Monday afternoon, every news outlet in Austin carried the story. Not the humiliation Marcus had planned, but his own arrest outside an elementary school, caught on camera coordinating a scheme to terrorize a 10-year-old girl. David Hartley suffered a massive heart attack at 6 p.m. Monday evening, collapsing in his office while screaming at attorneys about damage control. He survived, barely, and woke up 2 days later to find his empire crumbling around him. The city launched investigations into every Hartley development deal from the past decade. Federal prosecutors opened inquiries into campaign finance violations. Investors fled. Banks called loans. The real estate empire that had taken 30 years to build began disintegrating in days. Marcus pleaded guilty to avoid trial. 5 years probation, mandatory psychiatric treatment, permanent restraining order. In his allocution before the judge, he finally said words his father had never taught him. I was wrong. I'm sorry. 2 weeks later, Jake sat in the office of a competing construction firm, reviewing an employment offer. Better salary than he'd had before, equity stake in the company, the owner having watched the news coverage and decided he wanted a site supervisor with Jake Morrison's principles working for him. Catherine made partner at Mitchell & Barnes, leading their new pro bono initiative for harassment victims. The Hartley contracts they'd terminated were replaced within a month by clients who valued a firm willing to choose ethics over money. Ryan Sullivan called from Houston, 6 weeks sober, to say his brother's company was thriving, and he'd met someone at an AA meeting who understood about second chances. 1 month after the school incident, Jake and Emma were at his new construction site, a community center for underprivileged youth, when a black sedan pulled up. David Hartley emerged, moving slowly, oxygen tank wheeling behind him. He looked 20 years older than the man who'd started this war. "Mr. Morrison, may I have a moment?" Jake nodded to Brandon, who'd become permanent security, and walked to meet the dying man who'd tried to destroy him. "I came to apologize." David's voice was thin, weakened. "For my son, for myself, for everything. I spent 30 years building an empire and failed to build character in the only person who mattered. You showed me that. You showed the whole city that money and power mean nothing without integrity." He held out an envelope. "This is a check for the foundation I'm establishing in your late wife's name. The Rachel Morrison Foundation will fund treatment for men struggling with addiction and entitlement. Help them become the men they should be, instead of the monsters I enabled my son to become." Jake opened the envelope. $2 million. "I don't want your money. It's not for you. It's for the next Marcus Hartley, the next young man whose father gives him wealth instead of wisdom. Maybe Rachel's name can help create something good from all this pain." Emma appeared at Jake's side, studying the old man with that penetrating gaze that missed nothing. "Mr. Hartley, can people really change?" David looked at her, and tears formed in his eyes. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying." After he left, Emma slipped her hand into Jake's. "Are you going to take the money?" "What do you think we should do?" She considered carefully. "Mom always said helping people was the most important thing. If the money helps people, we should let it." Jake knelt to her level. "You're right. Your mom would want that." They stood together watching the construction crew frame walls that would become classrooms and gyms and safe spaces for kids who needed them. Building things that helped people, making the world slightly better than they'd found it. Emma pointed at the blueprint. "When this is finished, will it help people?" "That's the goal, sweetheart. Always build things that help." Catherine arrived as the sun set, carrying dinner for 3. They ate on the tailgate of Jake's truck, Emma chattering about her school project while adults listened and smiled, grateful for ordinary moments after extraordinary trials. The Hartley name faded from headlines, replaced by new scandals and dramas. Marcus disappeared into treatment somewhere in Arizona. David lived 4 more months, just long enough to see the Rachel Morrison Foundation accept its first clients. Jake Morrison returned to the quiet life he'd built, raising his daughter, building things that mattered, remembering that sometimes the greatest victories weren't won with violence, but with the courage to stand up when everyone else looked away. And Emma grew up knowing her father was exactly what she'd always believed. Not a hero from movies or comics, but the real kind. The kind who did the right thing, even when it cost him everything. The kind who protected what he loved without becoming what he fought against. The kind of man who understood that some fights were worth fighting, not because you'd win, but because losing while standing tall was better than winning while on your knees.